Hi, everyone. How are you? We're here on CSC Live, and we're really, my name is Michael Yara Davidson. I'm an associate member here in Toronto, and I've been diligently working with a group of people behind the scenes for about the past 18 months on the new Canadian Society of Cinematographers website, which you can see here. So I'm going to take about 10 minutes at the top of this CSC Live and just walk you through the site. Feel free to spread the word that the new site is online at csc.ca. And yeah, send us some feedback, send us your questions, and let us know what you think about it. So you'll see here, we're on the home page, the landing page. If we can get Jeremy to scroll down. This is going to be our landing page here. Just standing by, just waiting for some. Just hang on a minute, please, friends.
Are you not seeing me scrolling, Michael?
No, I'm not.
Oh, I am scrolling.
I'm not seeing it. Let me log into my Instagram and see if I can see what you're doing there. All right, great. I'm not seeing it. All right, hopefully we're not going to get too much feedback now. Sorry about that, folks. Yeah, so you'll see on the main page of the site here, we have our mission statement. That's, as everyone knows, we've been an organization since 1957 in Canada. Okay, now I've lost the screen. All right, there we go. Great, Jer, thank you. Yeah, and so as we scroll down, you'll see the latest news and events. So when you come back, this will be refreshed as new events and news come into the organization. And scrolling down some more, you'll see our Instagram posts, which is great. These are always refreshed as new full members come in and do some posts. You'll see this updated constantly, so you can spread that and go ahead and follow us there as well. All the newest issues of the Canadian Cinematographer magazine are here, and they will be in a carousel format with the newest issues posted, and they will take you to a link to the store once you mouse over them. But we'll get to that at the end of this presentation. Down at the bottom, we're always thankful to our sponsors. The Canadian Society of Cinematographers is a volunteer-driven organization, and we wouldn't be able to do any of this without the help of our sponsors. So if you'd like to see who the current sponsors are of the organization, you can go ahead and click and drag to see who's posted, and that will take you over to their website. So that's basically how the main page is laid out. So we'll go back up to the top. Our member section. We're nothing without our members, right? So you'll see all of our members listed in the directory, and there's a search function here that you'll be able to filter out based on membership status. You'll be able to select and their location in Canada as well as abroad. And once you apply that search, everyone's listing will be posted. And if you see the member's name in red, that will mean that they have a website, or it will go to their reel or their IMDb listing. So it's a great way to find members in your area, or you can send this to producers, and it'll be able to filter out and see who's local to you, right? So that's how the membership directory works. It'll be updated constantly. And if you know anyone that's interested in the organization and wants to know more about it, you can send them over to the members, become a member link. Yeah, so you'll be able to click there and become a member. That'll jump over to the store. It talks about all the membership benefits, the benefits of becoming a member, all the different membership levels. Yeah, and it'll walk you through all the particulars of joining the organization. So speaking of the organization and the fact that we've been in existence since 1957, if we go to About, it has we've gone through the archives, we've pooled all these great resources that really show the depth and how wide the organization is. Here's our current board of directors. So that will be updated every year. And we actually go back to the history, and we see where the organization actually started with all these great historical photos that haven't been available in this format before. So yeah, there's lots of stuff to dig into and really understand how influential the CSC has been over all these years, and who the founding members were, and how we've gotten to today. So a lot of great historical data here. So feel free to dive in, and it's really interesting to see how deep the organization actually is. Yeah, so from the three boxes that we have on the homepage, you'll be able to go to the news. Essentially, those will be auto-incremented as they're added. But if you'd like to come to the news and events page to see what's up with the organization, what's going on, what's upcoming, you'll be able to log into each one of these pages and actually see particulars of news and events that are happening with the organization. Again, same thing. It's all filterable, searchable. You can filter by media type and check it out. And then we jump over and we're going to look at the media section. Same thing. We've got lots of great podcasts with our members. We have historical video, photo galleries, and then upcoming, once things actually get rolling again post-COVID, there'll be blog entries to put in to keep you up to date on what's going on. So lots of really rich, great in-depth interviews with our members, our full members. Lots of stuff for you to participate in and really dig into it. One of the things we're really proud of with the organization is our education being taught by full members. So if you check out the education page, it talks about fostering the art and craft of cinematography in Canada, and the types of workshops that are available. Obviously, they're being put on hold now because of the current situation, but once you come back to this page, you'll be able to see past workshops. There's great videos in here just talking about and showing you what happens at these workshops, the type of gear that's involved, what you can expect. And this is a listing of all of the past workshops the organization has ran. So yeah, feel free to dig in. There's lots to explore on the site. Very detailed information here. And of course, every year we have the annual CSC Award Show. That's kind of the highlight of the social calendar for the organization. You can feel free to come here and check out the nominees for 2020. There's the Envisionist Award. That's the new award that's being presented. A photo gallery of all the participants and award winners. And then you can actually go back and get a historical record of all the presenters. There's the award speeches are here, the nominees. It's really great in depth. We've worked really hard to make it well-rounded and really deep, so you can actually go back through the years. And jumping into the magazine, Canadian Cinematographer Magazine is, of course, our flagship publication. We have a statement from our editor and further down, recent editions and archived editions as well. So before we jump into the story, I just want to touch, if we can just scroll right down to the bottom page, I want to touch upon one more thing. It would be under resources. So in the footer of the page, there's lots more places to explore. If you go to the resources page, you'll see a very useful list of organizations that can help you point you in the right direction. And we've just added a document as well, a resource guide, so that's downloadable in a PDF format. And yeah, so again, lots of organizations to explore, point you in the right direction, lots of resources there available to you. And just before I leave, we just want to jump over to the store as well. We're introducing a brand new Csc Store. So you can download digital subscriptions of the magazine. We're also offering a bundle of legacy issues and specials on the store for the month of July for a launch special. And I'm getting a note here. There was a poll to see which bottle design we would choose. And there's the winning, there was a poll with our members to see what the bottle design would be. It's an excellent bottle. You can pour basically rainwater into it and it'll filter it through the top. It's really an excellent product and branded with the organization's name on it. The CS Store, we've made it so you can actually go in and pay your membership as well. And new members can come and join here with the different levels, and it gives you all of the resources that you need to know and understand when applying for different levels of membership in the organization. So everything is there and complete. Unless I'm missing anything, there's lots of great stuff to look at on the store. I think that's kind of it. We're really excited to present it to the world. We've been working very hard on this for about the past 18 months. It came out of the President's Committee. And I'd just like to thank Jeremy Benning, Martin Wojtunik, and Christina Jena as well. They've been very helpful in helping me launch the site. And I'll leave it at that. Thanks for joining me today, and please explore, please send us messages. Let us know what you think about the site, and we'll see you soon.
Is it time?
It appears to be that time.
It's time. Thank you for the website launch demo.
I was actually thinking as it was going on, you know, I'm often reminded how much I love instructional videos.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like anything explained to me in great detail really puts me in a good spot mentally.
It's like an ASMR experience.
It is, weirdly, actually. The ASMR thing is interesting to me. It's like I sort of refuse to accept it, but at the same time, I know it's happening to me, you know? Like, like I don't want this to be happening to me, but I am becoming super relaxed hearing this, like, you know, breakdown of the new CSC website.
Yeah, I was like really transfixed, honestly. And now here to go live, so.
Here we are.
Yeah,
and shout out to Christina for the smiliest promo material. I think you and I collectively probably have never smiled so largely as we have in those.
It's true. I
feel like every photo of both of us is always just like, you know,
I always look totally deranged and depraved in set photos and like exhausted.
I know.
Stressed.
I know.
We both chose pictures that really like capture the joy.
Yeah.
Because it's a joyful thing what we do. I think we feel a joy.
It is. We're extremely fortunate.
Sharing of photos.
Yeah. So who are you?
Okay, my name's Maya Bankovic, and I'm a Toronto-based DP. was born here. I have built, you know, my filmmaking community here, and full CSC member, and I do a wide range of stuff. I do doc, I do commercials, I've done a bit of TV, and for me the true love, I think, is feature films. But you know, and music videos and stuff. I've like kind of done a lot of it, and it's been a fun ride for the past, I'd say, like 15 years or so. And who are you?
It's so crazy to me to think how long we've known each other. It's
I
like
know.
I was like sinking in the other day because we sort of see each other in these weird vacuums of like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm in LA doing something, or oh, I'm in Toronto doing something, and we, you know, we have these sort of like benchmarks where we've kind of linked up, and then, you know, things happen and 5 years goes by, and then
Yeah.
so it's almost 20 years actually. I was realizing that it's coming up on it. So I'm Matt Lloyd. I'm a cinematographer as well. I reside in Los Angeles, California currently, but I've kind of lived all over. Born in Calgary, Alberta. Full CSC member for almost 10 years, or maybe even 10 years. That might have been 2010. And I'm happy that we got to link up and do this thing.
Yeah, thanks so much for making time. I know people got a little bit of time on their hands, although you've been ramping up again. But I've heard a little bit
Yeah.
already. Yeah, for
Yeah, well,
viewers, it's happening here too.
I think we're about to have a lot more time on our hands in California because it's not going particularly well currently, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. So for people, you know, I got a lot of texts like, how do you know Matt? How did this happen? We share an agent too, WPA. So some people thought maybe who are lovely people, put it together.
Yeah.
But Matt and I go back those 15, 20 years because we both went to York University here in Toronto. And
the hallowed halls of North York.
Exactly, yeah. Which, looking back, I think it was kind of cool that it was so isolated up there because I don't know.
It was. It's like, you know, someone told me a story, not to digress, which I will immediately, but someone told me a story that that campus was actually commissioned and designed to be put on the central coast of California. And then somehow like the plans fell through and they just had this plan for a university that was just sort of randomly purchased and placed sort of east-west facing in, you know, North York, Ontario, where, you know, 6 months of the year, you're just, instead of channeling the nice ocean breeze, you're just getting like, you know,
the most frigid wind tunnel.
I mean, literally you would come out the door. Like, I remember like some of the, you know, when you were in sort of the far east part of the camp and you'd like open this door and the door would fly open and be stuck open. And it would just be like an ice storm, you know,
you have like an
blowing you in the face. I mean,
yeah, trying to load your redheads into the car and it's just,
oh my God. Yeah.
Needles in your face. Yeah. But you know, I don't know. We built up some stamina, I feel like.
Certainly stamina was on tap.
Yeah.
To get things done out there.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, something that really that I always loved about you was the fact that, you know, when I was there, it sort of felt like you and I kind of, in conjunction with this great relationship we built with Antonin Lotsky, who, anybody who doesn't know who Antonin Lotsky is, you know, an incredible cinematographer in his own right and an incredible educator. Really, I think for both of us sort of was the beginning of the path forward, you know, into our careers. And
he took his students really seriously. He like expected us to do this with our lives, you know.
Yeah.
He like expected we would shoot again, which is a big deal, you know, when you're that age.
It is. It's huge. Mm-hmm. And I think that, you know, he sort of created this craft stream there that kind of existed, it felt like, but it I think that sort of once the three of us were kind of on that track, it just sort of really took off. And you know, his sort of like the cinematography department originally was you know, like him and I in his office for office hours.
Yeah.
And
I told the story recently where he just like snuck me a photocopy of an old American cinematographer magazine article about women cinematographers.
really,
Yeah, just really quietly. Like, I guess it had been this like elephant in the room, you know, because I was like the only female
Still
in
is,
my
still
class.
is.
Yeah, and it was just like,
Still
and no one was
is.
talking about it yet, and he had his eyes on everything, you know.
he did, and really just sort of this very, you know, sort of like forthright Eastern European style of education, where it was all, and I think it probably informed both of our processes and our collaborations, you know, moving past that time. You know, it was so sort of, you had to just know the technique, and it was sort of this cause and effect relationship. Like, I think I want it to look like this, you know, here is the process that I need to go through in order to achieve it. And I still carry that with me today, you know, his kind of sensibility with, okay, you know, what is the desire, and then, you know, how to achieve the effect, you know, which is at the base of a lot of sort of the core of what's going on, you know, which you can lose sight of sometimes. So yeah, I think that sort of the fact that you and I kind of had that connection with him over those years kind of made us inseparable in a way, or kind of tied together.
You're like tethered for life when you have a mentor like that, you know. Can I like, I hope I'm not embarrassing you, but I had to pull this up. He emailed this to me last year. Hopefully people can see it. This is you in Prague.
Oh, on Spider-Man.
Yeah, he was so proud. You know, you invited him to set, and it was like awesome for him to see, and that's really great when you can like bring someone out to see what you're up to now at that scale.
I was so happy to see him in that context, because I think, like, you know, years earlier he had kind of convinced me to go there to the school that he went to, FAMU, and do a summer in that sort of European conservatory environment, which was totally my jam. Like, I ate it up, and to be back there that many years later, you know, on a film, and you know, I sort of told him it was going to happen, and he made plans to come out, and he hung out with us, like, you know, long days in the National Theater, and the, you know, just doing take after take after take of whatever we were doing that day. And he just hung out, like, just, you know, just hung out with Francesco, the DIT, and was so into it, and so into what was going on, and just thought, like, wow, that passion that many years later is incredible to me. You know, it's really,
yeah, there's a lot in this like endeavor of like filmmaking that comes around like full circle again and again like that, I find, you know, like with when you can establish like great relationships early on, or at whatever point, you know, and they don't really they don't just like wither away. It's like you find yourself back in a place that was instrumental to you once, now it has like new meaning. Or the people, or like, you know, the people that you did like really inspiring work with at the beginning, which is also what we're going to talk about, and how that sort of grounds you, you know, as you go forward. Like, I feel like there's a lot of a mentality, which is fine, and like we all have it, and it's really good. It's like to be expansive and like grow your network and move through the world that way. But there are certain like kind of cornerstone like individuals or places that'll pull you back, you know?
Yeah. No, you need those. You need those moorings or whatever, the place you tie up on the dock. You know, it's like,
totally. Yeah, exactly.
To be able to hold you.
Yeah. Well, something else about York I was thinking about, I was like, Matt was obviously like a very passionate and talented person, like from a young age. That was clear. But there was also like a spirit behind what you did that like I like to feel like I related to a lot, because it didn't feel like it was rooted in that sort of like grandiose, flashy, impressive filmmaking thing that I think a lot of students feel pressure to do. It always like felt like you were operating from a place of, well, first of all, serving the director you were working with, you know?
Right.
Which is also what we're here to talk about, is our directors. And like, I just found, you know, like I realized in school how much I loved directors. And that was something I saw in you too. Like you just really were there to like, just really do your best for them and like serve what they were doing and come up with a language together. And it just was like really collaborative driven mentality, I guess, which is, I think it's kind of rare in those like early in film school environments that can be so like competitive or a little hostile sometimes, you know?
For sure. No, totally. Can be really a cutthroat experience on some levels. I feel like especially now, you know, back then it was like, you know, there was sort of this need to master the skill in order to get any kind of result. Like, you know, you're still threading film and going out there and trying to, you know, light a slow speed film stock to like get a, you know, a short done, you know, with whatever ends you had, or you know what I mean? And you couldn't, there was no opportunity for it to go wrong. You know what I mean? Like you couldn't,
Absolutely.
you know, it's stressful in its own right, but there's sort of a disconnect where like I felt like we were sort of maybe in that York environment supporting each other more proactively maybe than would be now, where you can kind of just, I mean, not that it's any, not to take away anything from what's happening now, but there was sort of a do or die thing in the film days that made it a little bit different. But yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I really, I have always admired your, in a similar way, you know, how you move between directors, collaborate with a lot of the same people all the time, which is always a good sign. Like I always say, like, you know, how's that person? It's like, well, do they work with the same people often? You know, it's like when you see just single collaborations all the way through a career, you kind of wonder what's up, because you do these things and build these sort of lifelong friendships. And, you know, it's nice to be able to sort of repeat and expand and explore with shorthand and, you know, and I think you've done that extremely well. And then also like being able to move between mediums, which is something that, you know, really is, and move through mediums with the same director, you know, which is sort of how we come to our sort of collaboration with Chelsea McMullan, who, for anyone who doesn't know her, is a, you know, just fabulously talented director who, you know, we've both known now for 20 years and have collaborated with jointly and then also independently. And, you know, you guys have spanned, I mean, your body of work, I was looking at it last night, just like, my golly, these guys really, you know, it's just such a wide range of stuff that you've done, you know, everything from like commercials to videos to feature length documentary to experimental stuff to, you know, I mean, it's like, it's really, really awesome.
He's like truly one of the most curious people that I think I know. So that's why she can go any which way and come up with something that's so like singularly her own, you know? Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe it's, I mean, I sort of felt like when we were chatting about this thing yesterday that it might be kind of interesting to dive into, you know, that relationship starting, you know, obviously there was sort of a school context for me that I wasn't sure if you guys ever had that, you know, like her and I were sort of just figuring this thing out together early on. And you know, I was really, her aesthetic is so sort of, so singular and also so sort of ever present in what she's doing, that even if it's just like a person sitting in a corner of a room talking to camera in a documentary setting, it still has this kind of feeling going on. And I encourage everybody to sort of look at that work, because it is a great example of dexterity, you know, and being able to sort of cross the streams, so to speak, but maintain like a real visual presence to the work. So maybe, I don't know, just because my beginnings with her are much more sort of mundane, like we went to school together but
the work you guys did was so beautiful. We got to talk about it. We got to
but
know the story.
Would you, because I've never actually heard the story about your guys' first, you know, sort of collaboration in those first conversations. So I'd be interested to maybe hear a little bit.
It was interesting because like I was a huge admirer of her work that she had done with you. You two were a year ahead of me in school, so it was always like sort of setting the tone, like in the stage for like what life could be, what these films we were making could be. And but by the time we were both out of school, it was actually Anton and Emnon Bookbinder, who was another wonderful prof at York, paired Chelsea and I together to do a short documentary on the Toronto Island together. And I realized that was sort of like my first time getting to know her properly outside of just like the halls. And so we had graduated already. And the two of you had started a project in British Columbia the summer before that would become the film Dead Man. That was our first project with the NFB. But in the meantime, you had moved to Los Angeles to pursue the American Film Institute, amongst other things. Yeah. And so she had shown me this sort of demo pitch, shorter version of what would become Dead Man that was like so stunning. And I think you'd shot 35 mil of a rodeo. Oh man, yeah, that was a wild trip. I do remember that now. Amazing landscapes. Yeah. On like a BL4, I remember like 1,000-foot loads on this BL4, like just like walking up this. I mean, actually, weirdly, I'm still kind of working that way on occasion. It's like nothing changes. Right. You're like, yeah, whatever, just give me the thing, let's go. You know? Yeah. I noticed that about you actually. I'm jumping way into the future now, but when I worked with you in the fall, when you brought me out to do second unit stuff, which actually your producers like so charmingly referred to as the assassin unit. There was a lot of that was like an assassin potpourri. That so much fun. Yeah. You're still the same way. You like your mind works very quickly, and your crew love that about you actually a lot. And you strip the camera down and you're moving fast, but it's like a huge show, huge action show. So it's cool to see that spirit sort of continue. Yeah, I guess we like old habits die hard, right? Yeah, it's who you are. Yeah, why squash it? And yeah, all your producers, by the way, were like super impressed by that. Like, wow, that guy moves fast. Oh, that's very kind. Yeah. So you guys are out on the island, and and the Dead Man thing was sort of. I don't know that we really knew. You know, I remember I was back from LA for one reason or another. Often, as you're kind of immigrating to the States, you're like weirdly back. You don't really know why. You're like, oh, I have to do something with the paper and the what. You know, it's really that's a whole other talk, that experience. But we're out in I don't actually, what's the region? I mean, I guess it's Cache Creek, and then you go up and you're actually in Dead Man. Yeah, it's an area called Dead Man. It was near, the closest town was Kamloops, and it's actually like a semi-desert, very arid, stunning landscape. So stunning, like kind of more rolling, rounded hills, like foothills, I guess. Yeah. You're from the mountains. I don't know these buzzwords, but I think they're foothills. Just small, medium, and large. Yeah, how that's how we do it in Alberta. The small one, that's a big one. So for me, someone from Ontario, I was like, wow. I was like in awe of this landscape once I made it out there. But incredible. Yeah. So the two of you had started that project out, and I think, and then a few music videos came out of it as well. Right. Oh yeah. So and you know what? It's so funny with her because there's such sort of a long history of sort of aesthetics that she's kind of collected, I feel like,
from very early on, sort of
Yeah.
the things that are interesting remain interesting, you know, and new things come along and they sort of filter into her way. But you can develop this kind of conversation really in depth, where, you know, and I sort of end up doing things referentially often, I think, because of that collaboration more than anything. I'll sort of be talking to maybe the wrong audience and just sort of say like, oh yeah, it's like that scene with the one-armed guy in Berlin Alexanderplatz or whatever, you know, and people are like, what are you you know?
Yeah,
but
totally.
that's all her, you know, that's all her. Like I can remember, you know, being in Berlin with a film or something, and you know, she says, oh, we have to go watch, you know, 11 hours of Fassbender's Berlin Alexanderplatz, you know, where we're literally the only people, you know, it's like, and it's, you have to leave and come back because it's never ending, you know, and sort of, but those things, they kind of collect in the relationship, those moments stay in the DNA of,
yeah, she provides like an education that really sticks with you in that sense.
right.
And like she's, you know, I think a lot of great directors have a lot of references to pull from, but it's always great when they're older like that. They're more sort of like they're in canon. And so like by the time you're pulling from these things, they become this like beautiful mishmash of only what's like applicable to the moment. It never feels derivative. You're hardly talking about it at that point because you've just like absorbed it. You know, because you know, in our industry too, we see a lot of like sort of flavor of the week stylistic stuff too that happens, and that's fine. But it's always nice to work with. What's that?
There's a lot of style going on right now.
Yeah, totally. So it's nice when
not that you know, not to speak badly on style. You know, I think that yeah, it's you know, I think that your collection with the director and I think with Chelsea in particular is really really important to that, to being able to do a lot of the things that you're being asked to do, I think. You know, right?
Oh, for sure. It like launched my life, you know. They continue to be cornerstone. There's an interesting thing that comes up where people ask like, I think a lot of us like how much is it true that like, you know, only your last project matters? And I actually don't think it is at all true, because, you know, like you're only as good as your last film or something. I think directors hear that, but you can have something from like 10 years ago that people still ask you about and want to know more about.
Of course. You know, I really think that if you're making things with intent and some degree of honesty about the vision, that those things never go away, you know. They're and that only comes out of really kind of having a singular focus on supporting the vision of a director, you know. And directing is a really, you know, it's a really hard job, you know. Totally. And I think a lot of, you know, a lot of it, not only just sort of the physical manifestation of it, like standing there on the day around a lot of people, and obviously, you know, productions vary so widely in terms of what they are in the infrastructure. You know, I've stood on sets with directors and there's 2,000 people there, literally, you know, and they have to run it, you know, and then you stand on a set, you know, on the other side of it, you stand on a set with that for a project that has great ambition and that has, you know, a lot of sort of things it wants to do and things that they want to capture, but the resources aren't there. So then all of a sudden you're on the sort of the opposite side of the scale where, you know, you all really have to band together to achieve the goals at hand, you know. And
do you have any like sort of go to I guess like almost like therapeutic tricks for a director who's just like stuck like that, like or you know what I mean, like I like to operate from a place of theme with them so that a lot of the questions are just sort of inherently answered, for example.
Right. Yeah,
But
I mean,
like, you know.
I've always just tried to listen, honestly. I think that that's really, and often can get ahead of myself, like thinking I know, the big trap is, you sort of think you know what they're going to say, so you're like, yeah. And then, and you're sort of, because the whole movie business, as Harris used to say, it's running from the cops, it's just like all day that they're just, it's really, you're always up against it. No matter what. And, I think that often just like downshifting and actually listening and actually like absorbing what's being said, and then, conducting either the procedure of filming the scene or sort of the aesthetic implications of the scene, conducting it from a place of like, I have heard what it is you are saying, and I have digested it, and I can move it through my sort of internal practice to get the result that we're after, because it needs to be coming from at least the stuff that I really sort of enjoy and admire. It really is coming from a one point of departure. I think when you start to get into, voices are important, obviously, but when you start to get into just a free for all of ideas, and so it's really can start to muddy the waters a bit. And I think that Chell has always really kind of had this, not to keep bringing it back to her, but I guess it's a common relationship, so it's kind of easier to frame it in that way. But she's kind of always had that very much, where it was just like, I can remember early days where I still felt, like maybe I should argue to try to like change someone's mind or something. And just never really, it's like once that vision is kind of laid out, once that vision's kind of laid out, it's the only way to go. Like you honestly can't separate one idea from the other, because
it's how it contains like that cohesive quality.
It's coming from one place, right? It's and you're kind of supporting that.
The great producer Leah Marin at the NFB, I have to quote her on this because I asked her that once. She was like, and I know Leah through Chelsea as well. She was like an early supporter of us when we were like 21. And I asked her like a couple years ago, I was like, how do you consistently choose just great projects to bring to the National Film Board? Like things that are shot years before the conversation so that they like land right on time. And she's like, you just know when you meet a director with a point of view. And as long as they're coming from a point of view, the film is taken care of, kind of, because
so true.
It's so true. You're just channeling that worldview, and it informs every decision, like wardrobe, editing, music, like it just informs everything.
Right. Yeah. And it's amazing to watch those things, you just immediately, like with it, I'm always like really scared of like the first 6 minutes of anything, you know what I mean, that I've done or that people that I know have done. I'm always like, oh, it's just like that first like 6 to 8, maybe 10 minutes is, and for some reason, like those directors that really have it and are operating at that level, like, you're just right away, it was made with intent, it was made with care, it was made with, both in fiction and nonfiction, whatever it is, it was made with sort of respect for the subject and care and compassion, all the sort of things that are the hallmarks of great visual imagery anywhere,
That's like we were talking about just before we went live, is like that's when you feel like a director's like presenting an offering to the world, like here's this thing this gift I'm giving you, or this tribute to the subject,
or challenge too. I find too, it's really or discovery, where it's really And I think that's what, you know, like those films with Chelsea really, I think both, you know, just to talk about kind of the stuff that I was always taken with that you guys were doing. I think like from Dead Man into, you know, My Prairie Home, that I said that right? It's My Prairie Home.
Yeah.
You know, that particular film, and I think that relationship with Ray as well, like the three of you kind of creating this thing together that had offshoots, and obviously you and Ray went off to collaborate together on a number of things that I think probably Chelsea wasn't involved with, but there was sort of this forming of that whole pod of time that you all were sort of making those things. Felt to me like very much that. It felt to me like, oh, here's a group of people who are bound by a common idea or vision of both sort of aesthetics and society, and are putting it together in a combination of sound and image that is really compelling, you know, and is both saying something about the world we're in, and also just sort of creating an aesthetic within itself, you know, both in sort of the fiction and the nonfiction side.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. I think it's important, like, you know, when you're trying to like carve out a space that's like kind of, you know, taking ideas or working with people who are kind of left on the fringes a lot of the time, you want to really elevate. You want to try to elevate and really say like, this deserves a place in like on the biggest screens and like the biggest platform, you know? So I don't know, for me, like filmmaking's always been a social mission too, like you said, you know, and I see a lot of that in your work though, too, with the directors you've worked with and continue to work with. Just before lockdown, you were working with Ava DuVernay, sorry. And that's like really amazing because she's done so much to push the conversation forward. It was a pilot, I think you did, right?
Yeah, we finished right before it all got crazy, yeah.
And just incredible directors, and like, yeah, how much does that play into your choices too? Like the sort of more social, political angle. I'm just curious. I've always been curious.
I really have been extremely fortunate to be sort of included in those types of opportunities to sort of communicate something that's going to further the conversation, hopefully, and start to move this collective planet in a direction. And it's not sort of it's not necessarily by design, but I think that part of it, you know, is really just being open to everything and everyone in the right context, you know, and sort of, I really do feel like oftentimes sort of I have sort of like oh, you just went away. Are you there?
Yeah. Can you hear me still?
No. Well, now I'm just staring at myself, which is slightly less. Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Anyway, sort of the opportunity to be involved in those sorts of things, and I think, you know, work with Khalil and you know, Paul Hunter, who's a very dear friend of mine, and you know, our collaborations really have always felt like they're trying to do some of what we're talking about, and Ava obviously is, you know, just the most remarkable person I can think of, you know, just both visually and just in terms of her whole way about going about the making of art is, I think, has sort of changed so much about my way. So
that's so awesome.
You know, just like it is so extremely fortunate to be put in situations where you can sort of have that impact, but the core of it really is about this dynamic of like being a listener and being a collaborator who will sort of fight to maintain the integrity of the vision, who will both understand the vision at its core and then fight at all costs to communicate that vision to others who often aren't interested in hearing it. You know what I mean? Like, if we're being honest about the filmmaking process in general, and I think, you know, Chelsea would definitely concur that, you know, you're often just sort of explaining things that aren't landing because a lot of it, you know, and I'd be interested to hear your feelings on this, but the mechanics of the filmmaking process don't often lend themselves to people really like listening to the goal and trying to further it necessarily in that moment. And I think that's something that Chelsea does really, really well. And that, you know, I watched Ava do recently, and a lot of really great directors spend the time to get the people around them who are going to, you know, both embody the vision and support the vision and fight for the vision, and allow that vision to be singular and to represent it in all things and all choices, both from how you even carry yourself, like communicating with somebody on a film set or communicating with just the world at large while in the filmmaking process. Anyway, I hope that wasn't too preachy, but you know, it really is important to me, I think.
That's awesome. Yeah, to hear you say that, and I think it's like, once you work with someone operating from that sort of heart-driven but political perspective, it sort of snowballs. Your community kind of grows in that direction, because as a DP, you're seen as someone who is also, you know, fighting for those same things. I did an interesting doc with Astra Taylor where her question to a lot of people was, do you change policy or do you change hearts and minds? And, you know, that was sort of her like launching question with people in regards to the issue of democracy. And like, I thought that was really interesting, because we're like kind of in the business of changing hearts and minds, being in the arts, you know?
Sure.
But then there are people like Ava who are also fighting on the policy front. And I think we're seeing more and more of that, right? But like, yeah, When They See Us was one of the most emotionally devastating and impactful things I've ever seen in my life.
Incredible work.
But it's like high art at the same time. And like, how can you come out of that miniseries without your mind changed as well, you know? So if it needed changing. If you don't mind, there is a question from Norm here about your experience with Khalil. So I'm curious, because we're talking about people, you know, people who kind of really like set the stage for one's career. And I know like that the videos you guys have done together and like Until the Quiet Comes still comes up as a reference point so many years later. I don't know if you want to just like loosely talk about anything there, and I urge people to watch the video if they can.
Yeah, I mean, you know, obviously his work has had tremendous impact on all of us, both the things that I was fortunate to be involved in and the things that have come subsequent to that. You know, we really kind of came together at a very sort of important moment for both of us in terms of where we were just in the world. And we came together in a time at the Directors Bureau in LA where, you know, there was this sort of kind of creativity in the air. And I think that, you know, he just had so much he wanted to do and say and capture and live. And we just went and shot, you know, I mean, very much in the same way that's sort of the early relationship that we shared with Chelsea. And strangely enough, you know, Chelsea kind of came into that fold for a while when it was, you know, the sort of What Matters Most version of that sort of collective, which, you know, subsequently is no more. But, you know, we were all just kind of really going after it, you know, with each other. And we would do stuff that, again, you weren't sure, you know, necessarily where it was going to fit, but it was just all about sort of like capturing an aesthetic value to a real world situation, you know, and elevating as any artist would, you know, kind of trying to elevate the image itself to a place of poetics and to a place of and his editorial process is, you know, he went for a good amount of time. I remember he was kind of in with Terry Malick and was doing, you know, kind of absorbing a lot of that editorial technique. And his editor, Luke Lynch, is a super talented, very, very dear friend of mine, who, you know, in the way that they work together, it's almost like a new language, you know, that they, you know, just the truly nonlinear in both sort of the technical sense of nonlinear editing, but also just like the way that these things come together is cosmic almost, you know. It's yeah, he is a very special power on this earth. Khalil is yeah.
So it's almost like
it's almost hard to like communicate it, you know, because you really that was a very sort of deep and emotional time for anyone that was a part of it, you know. It was
I think it reads that way too. Like it feels like a lot of like those pieces are so inspired. I don't know how else to say it, that you just feel the inspiration behind it, but it's also, they have this like loose quality where they're exploratory. They're just as much about like the environment as like.
Yeah, absolutely. Very environmental, very environmental. And just sort of how space informs imagery, you know, I think is a very real thing. And much of the ask when working with someone like that is to be able to go into a space and not, you know, we sort of do this arbitrary thing in sort of commercial or, you know, whatever, Hollywood or whatever the word is, where we sort of appropriate spaces in a way that I don't love, actually, like how we can sort of roll in and all of a sudden condors are up and lights are up and there is a place for that and there's a necessity to that technique. But it oftentimes just immediately dismantles the inherent aesthetic of a space, you know. And you sort of, you know, I mean, you know, like you'll be on a tech scout and you'll roll in and it'll be noon and the light's kind of not great and you're kind of like, okay, this, that, and the other thing, we'll put, you know, negative over here and then the thing will be on the thing and we'll push the light and we'll, you know, you're just sort of assembling a version of the space to communicate the scene. And that often, then you show up at call at, you know, 6, 7 a.m. and you walk in and you go, oh man, like that's the lifeblood of this space, is this time of day with this possibility, with this, you know, scenario that's happening, light reflect, you know, it happens in New York all the time. Like you'll be in a space and you'll get a weird kick or something coming through that totally you could never calculate. And the space all of a sudden just like comes alive, you know. And I think that that's true of all places, you know, that there's a majesty to the spaces that Khalil was operating in, you know, whether it was Nickerson Gardens in South Los Angeles or whether it's Puerto Rico or wherever, you know, I mean, we went all over working in all kinds, New York, you know, Harlem, it really kind of, and every time there was just such a reverence for the space and the people in the space and sort of communicating that visually to people who don't necessarily have access to that possibility, you know. And I think that very much in the same way that you know, I think Dead Man does that and My Prairie Home does that. It just sort of, there's a great level of care for the spaces and the people, you know.
For sure, they serve as like tributes and really, reverence is a perfect word for it. It's like, it's hard to do that with like a bunch of tents and trucks, like you say. So I often like really miss the smaller footprint, or I try to keep that in my life sort of as much as possible. It's hard to do, you know, to really kind of more whimsically capture the essence of a place, you know, with a big machine. But yeah,
can we do one thing, just because I love it so much and I feel like we ended up just rapping more than maybe we thought we would. Can we watch, there's this thing that you made with Chelsea that I think I sent to Christina or we were chatting about it, but it's that film Slip.
Yes, I do have it here. I'm going to share my screen.
And then I think actually we can get Chelsea too at the end of it.
Yeah.
That might be fun.
Do you want to, you know what, maybe, okay, here, let me share. We can even talk about maybe bringing her in too, because we could talk over it a bit. I have an excerpt here.
Oh, sure. No, let's bring her. Let's bring her.
It's a talk show now. We have guests upon guests. This we made in 2008.
Introducing.
Hey guys, my evening is great right now. Thank you very much.
Wait, is this the whole thing or is this a shortened version? Oh, hi, Cal.
But here, you want to watch the whole thing? You can. This is Chelsea. We keep talking about Chelsea, so we brought her in. And speaking of space, like, yeah, this is really exploring a change room and all of its possibilities. It was based on a site-specific dance piece by the choreographer Yvonne Ng. You want to talk about it, Chelsea?
Hey, Chelsea, are you like moving or something? What's going on in the background?
No, this is actually my therapy stool.
Oh, okay, great.
Here, and then I sit on that couch. So when I do virtual therapy, which I've been doing a lot in quarantine, yeah, that's the way it works. So
nice, I like that. You got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, let me just say that there's a degree of jealousy that I encounter when I watch this thing, because I feel like it was sort of the apex of like an aesthetic endeavor that had been going on in your head as a director for a long time. And I could feel, I could feel inklings of like, our time in Europe, and I could feel inklings of like this sort of great collaboration you had started with Maya, and I could feel sort of the stuff that was developed with Leanne and costume, and just like so many elements kind of coming together in one thing. Just this image of this woman and with the towel. I mean, it's like, it's so staggering to me. Where does it start when it comes to like how you are going to have something look?
yeah, I mean, I think with this one, this one's really weird. I always tell Maya that I felt like this is some sort of like something sort of tapped into like a sort of a dream space for me on this one that like is a little bit inexplicable. Like, I don't feel like I have particular references, but maybe it was just everything that we all were working on and sort of leading to this, where you didn't even need references. It's just actually, you're just more in your own sort of subconscious. Do
you have the rest of it, Maya?
Yeah, I think I'll queue up something else to keep going with it. Sorry, go on.
Also just kind of having good collaborators, but I feel like obviously the piece was really inspiring, but it also diverted across, like it was a live performance, and then it diverted a lot from the piece to adapt it to film. So a lot of it was taken from the stories of the place, how people use, because that's a real change room. It's the oldest free bathing space in Toronto, and people are still able to use it that way. So the stories of the people, like they had told me that this woman came in all the time and dyed her hair red. So that's kind of the sort of main character. So they're all really, and that's like also my documentary background, is just like pulling from reality, but bringing it into like a more surreal space. Yeah, and I think it was, so it's sort of, again, like working within a hybrid space that all of us have kind of worked in, and that's where I feel most comfortable.
It's funny because we were just sort of talking about the reverence for the spaces you're working in, and how Maya, I feel like this is, I mean, it's obviously heavily stylized in terms of, what the reflections are doing and the color and the interaction of the light and the costume and all that sort of stuff. But it also feels like even this choice I always loved, where it sort of is this silhouette moment all of a sudden, where you shut off whatever is above and there's that lamp hanging in the background.
just lighting up that back wall. That's about it, you know. Yeah, thanks for commenting on it. I have to shout out Sean Seeley, the Steadicam operator, who did just an amazing job on this too. And someone was asking who that was.
So crazy.
It's just kind of
it's so crazy because it actually feels like a human being. Like I was saying to Maya Chell that I felt like at some point it should go into a gallery setting. Like I could envision like an installation with like poured concrete floor and kind of glossy walls where the sound that people aren't getting because we're talking about photography, but the sound is incredible too. And just the feeling, like I always thought to myself, like, God, just to call it slip to me, but like I'm watching the thing going like, I'm about to slip and fall down. Like I'm so kind of lost in the visual that I feel this unease.
And I love this element of surprise with the dancer here, who's Linnea, who's like, what's she gonna do next, you know? And
how did he not fall down? How did he not?
There was a team behind him. There was a huge team and people hiding and calling out cues, and the sound design was done later.
Yeah, and actually originally the camera was supposed to slip at the end. And then we were shooting it and we were sort of like, first of all, how are we going to do this? But then it started to feel like corny as hell.
I forgot about that.
And then we were shooting and we're just like, no, this isn't right. It's like, it feels too much of like a pat ending and a send up to the title. So we cut that. But that was sort of like, the title came from that. But then at the end it was like, oh no, it's something else.
Yeah, the fact that there is no slip makes it worse for me. You know, it's like it makes the experience like more frightening somehow, because no one does fall down, but I'm constantly in this mode of I'm going to, you know.
Yeah,
it's that thing you kind of, which actually I think, you know, in your guys' collaboration together, there's a lot of that sort of these moments of I'm sort of, you know, putting the thing here and then you're not going to take it. You know what I mean? Like we're going to go to this far and then I'm going to restrain myself, which is hard to do in movies, especially in sort of commercial settings where the payoff is so kind of essential to the product.
It's like a delay, which can
be
satisfying. But
you say that again?
Like this was at the time when you were working with Khalil as well, and I was in LA a lot with you guys.
Right.
You're like, everyone's so cool. Khalil, like I even feel like, you know, yeah, there's a lot of you in here, Matt. There's a lot of Khalil, like Khalil's influence on me. And this, like, it was all sort of happening around each other, and he was super supportive of this film and promoted it.
Yeah.
Chelsea, do you remember when we visited him in New York for an afternoon, and I'll never forget, he had like, that's the only time I met him, but he had like in his apartment, Passion of Joan of Arc just looping on his TV.
Not yeah.
So awesome.
Not uncommon. Like I can remember sitting in the Wilshire apartment, like just literally like pulling up the craziest stuff on YouTube like all day. We would just sit and be like, hey, what about this? What about that? And what about it's
great.
Yeah, talk about references.
Matt, do you feel like you have time to do that still with people?
Yeah, in the right settings, for sure. In the right environments. I mean, a lot of this stuff, you know, I mean, I kind of, and it's funny, I sit here now with you two wonderful people that I've known forever, and I think about how different it would have been if I'd made different choices, and I don't, you know, regret any of it. But you know, the commercial setting is, you know, it is very much commercial filmmaking in general, not television commercials per se, but there is sort of a kind of technical prowess to it, and you're kind of there offering expertise and doing this thing that doesn't feel like that, you know what I mean? And to be able to do both, there's not that many people that do that extremely well, you know. And I haven't got there yet, and I hope to one day, but You know, to be able to operate with that level of specificity and that sort of like creative intonation on a commercial level is really, I mean, there's sort of like, I mean, there's Inuritu, there's, you know, a few people that sort of are kind of able to do that well.
I do think it has to come from the director though, or like from the material, no?
Yeah, and also just a group of people that are, as we've been saying, kind of in support of a singular vision.
Yeah.
That sort of everyone's making this. I mean, Chell, you got to feel that way, right? Like on the things where she's still here.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
I just don't see you. I mean, on the things where you're kind of, you're having to communicate to a lot of people the vision over and over and over again, you know, I mean, that's got to be an incredibly difficult space to operate in.
Yeah, and you're talking specifically in like the commercial space?
I mean, I think just in anything, I think, you know, whether you're getting funding, whether you know, you're going around, you're like pitching a thing for funding, you're, you know, you're doing any number of the exercises of sort of the process of filmmaking. Very small amounts are actually filming anything, you know, for a director. And you're just sort of constantly having to recalibrate yourself to re-explain a vision, you know, over and over and over again, and both make it kind of something that is commercially viable, but also, you know, in the spirit of your aesthetic and in the spirit of your kind of vision for the thing.
Yeah,
it's a tough way.
Of course. I mean, I think like one thing that I like about both of you as DPs is like you're very like protective of the director's vision, and so I always feel very like safe with you. And it's an odd thing to say, but I feel like there's definitely times I haven't felt safe. Like I haven't felt like my vision or what I'm trying to achieve is in safe hands, or someone has my like best intentions in mind of like trying to achieve what I want to achieve. And that can be a stabilizing place for a director. And so when you have somebody you feel like is going to go to battle with you for your vision, then you feel empowered to make the choices that you're going to make, because in those moments then you have to make intuitive choices, and you have to, you know, things change in the moment. And if you're feeling scared, or you're feeling like you're not going to be heard, or your vision's not going to be protected, then you start to second guess yourself too much. And that's a really dangerous place for a director, because you have to so much trust your instincts. So you have to put yourself in the best position to be allowed to do that. And I feel like anytime I haven't followed that, I've been in trouble. And I feel like that is like both of you, that is like your like one of my like favorite qualities of working with you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's very kind of.
I feel without a director at the helm, like it goes off the rails. Like it's our job to protect what you've set out to do, you know. I really strongly believe that. It's like that's why it's so important to like choose those collaborations and carefully if they're new, and hold on to the ones that you got, really.
I think like the learning process, like that I will have a completely different process than another director, and both can be right.
Totally. I mean, I work with a lot of people who just I just turn up and shoot it, you know what I mean? And that's totally fine as well, you know, where it's not I'm not required to be in the process in the same way, you know. Those things are like this, you know, it's a more sort of craft-based scenario versus these sort of lifelong things, which are, you're talking about sort of the development of an aesthetic, the development of a shorthand or a language, you know, however you want to frame it. I think actually I sort of wanted to show that. Do you remember Ray's piece that we did we were sort of talking about space informing choice and this reverence for space, and I think that thing you and I did, which I would guess call I don't know what you call it, but it came out of this time spent that you and I spent out in Dead Man together, and then you and Maya obviously made a whole film out there, and then we went back. I feel like it was years later, but maybe that's wrong.
Yeah, no, it was. Yeah,
I was
And-
just to throw to that.
back to the for that.
Maybe we'll
I'm
we
gonna
should watch
share
it
it.
with the sound, Maya, just because
Yeah.
you can't take Ray out of that
Definitely.
picture.
Angel.
Here we go. Do you see it yet?
I don't.
Okay, here we go. You can
I
also
see your amazing desktop though. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh boy, here we go. Okay.
I think you're at the end though.
Oh my God. Sorry. Oh, tech support. Turn it down half so we can still talk, of course, including Ray.
Yeah, I love
Ray?
it. Yeah, I mean, I think this was like a thing where I just asked you to come out, and I had some ideas, and yeah, and I was trying. This video is like this concept. It was mostly improvised by both of us, right? We just drove around with just us and a camera, and I found this subject who I was like obsessed with, Dawn.
Oh, done.
Yeah, and I spent 6 months making a film there, and still to gather or something. I still was gathering images of things I'd seen there that I wanted to capture.
Right.
Yeah, we just rolled up there for a weekend and banged this one out, but it's still like, I mean, in terms of, I don't make a lot of music videos, but this is definitely my favorite. And yeah, I would even a music video, it's like a documentary, or I don't know, had some sort of
It just felt to me being there that it was like truly, I mean, this guy coming up is my favorite. I mean, it just felt to me like an artist being you who was just so kind of in tune with a space and had such a deep kind of care and understanding for that environment that we had both been in numerous times before, but I remember just sort of, it felt like kind of being there for the first time again, and seeing like that little thing in the gas station, where it's like you've driven past it 100 times, but in the context of hearing kind of Ray's voice coupled with the image, it just sort of functioned like that. The hat thing, it's like just this sort of assembly of images that there's a narrative to it, but it's also really just about sort of an aesthetic endeavor, and how you and I always sort of talk about like how these things only happen in these places, that like you go to do this in a seemingly similar landscape in Palmdale or whatever in California, and it's not this. Like this happens because it's here and it's with you and it's in this environment, much in the same way that Flying Lotus happens because it's Khalil in Nickerson Gardens, with sort of love and respect for the space and the people in the space. You get these results, and how it harmonizes with music is it's just like it's hard to even say what's going on. It's just happening.
Yeah, I mean, this is like a culmination of being, I've been going to this place for 3 years. These are friends of mine that I've made up there. And so it can only come from, and it's like a distillation of that. But also I think it's like, it's a photographic essay in a way. They're sort of moving photographs, which another thing we all share. And like Matt, you and I in university took, I think, a pretty life-altering photography theory class that really both got us very interested. So like photography is a reference we use all the time. And this is like,
Right.
I also argue that this is a photographic essay.
Right. Yeah, it does feel very much like that, you know, that it explored things that were kind of seen but hadn't been seen, strangely, you know, that they had been seen in the context of like, oh, driving by, look at that hillside, you know, but then you sort of stand there in the context of that song and you put a lens on it, and all of a sudden years of having talked about things, you know, and it's a simple thing, you know. I often say, like, for people who are starting the beginning of their journey, you know, there's nothing to that other than being sensible, respectful people who can go to a space and admire it for what it is and integrate into a community and photograph it carefully and with respect, and you get just sort of these tremendous visual experiences out of that relationship, you know, which you do exceedingly well. You know, obviously both of you are able to kind of move into environments and render them so well.
I'm just covered in chills. That video is so beautiful. It's like so spectacular. How much of it was like, did you ask people to stage any of it, or was it just completely by just staying open and looking around?
I mean, the portraits were all staged, right? Like, we kind of met people in
the
you
moment?
knew, I felt like you knew a lot of the people, Chell. Is that true?
Nice. We had spent months there. Maya and I lived in a camper trailer on somebody's lawn for 2 months together.
Right.
Yeah.
So we just had to go knock on people's doors, which was like how you meet people.
Yeah.
Knock on people's doors to like ask if you could use their bathroom. And then yeah, no, I mean, I knew every single person in the shot. I would say I had 50% of the shots. Like, I was like, I have a vision of, like, I had written it down, like, these were the
Right.
things and we were sort of checking them off. And then at the same time being open, like, we found those people. I think I just saw a sign that said Bunny Ranch.
That's true. And of course I had no clue what that meant. What that was going to lead to. You sort of turn off the road to a hand painted sign that says Bunny Ranch. You're not sure what that's going to be, but turned out to be a literal bunny ranch.
But I think that's like that kind of thing sharpened all of our instincts. Like, and that's the thing you and Maya also share, which is like, obviously it's like integral to my work because a lot of it relies on sort of creating situations where you have to react, which I really like because it gives the image a life. So I don't like I'm definitely not like one of those directors that is, you know, meticulously set designing everything. It's like I have
Right.
but like I want things to charge it and I want real life things to interrupt things. So, but you both have these incredible just instincts that you're able to very quickly, like, I think there are a lot of DPs that I've met as well that just, like, you know, something goes wrong or throws them off, then the shot's kind of ruined. But it's like about being able to adapt very quickly and not need like a bunch of lights in a studio to make something beautiful. And I feel like you're both really good at that. You're good at the other thing. And I find that my favorite work of both of yours is when you kind of mix those things together.
You're very good at setting the stage for just like a lot of patience to happen and to let life just unfold, though. That's something I miss sometimes. I feel like we can do that a bit in commercials, like literally in commercials where we have a day to just sort of like roll and play. Like, that's actually an area that feels very playful to me. I've been enjoying working in commercials quite a lot. But
That's good.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, and I do like some comedy spots and stuff where you can do that. I think Chelsea's very good at that. It's just like, here's the scenario, here's the stage, or in our case, it's like the shot, and then let's see what sort of mise-en-scène unfolds, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
But Chell, like, and just to ask, to further that, I wonder, you know, because you're sort of writing now a little bit, and it feels to me that when I read it it does have intent. It does have sort of visual intent on the page, which, you know, is not necessarily uncommon. You know, there's a lot of sort of things that get written in shots, but you know, are you, when you're writing that stuff down, like, how is that coming to be? I've always been curious, like from a director's standpoint of who's writing something, like, are you, you know, is there execution in mind, or is it just like, you know?
Yeah, I think there's a general like tone, there's an aesthetic that like I'm picturing in my head. Yeah, whether or not I'm writing alone or my partner Doug and I write together, but he like knows me so well that he knows my aesthetic very clearly. But we still are constantly talking about references. We're constantly talking about art, painting. So that's all sort of coming, it's all being siphoned in there, and it's very yeah, it's very specific. I think I just like, I don't want to in any way sort of like indicate that, yeah, it's not everything is planned. It's just that like I feel like what I really like to do is plan everything down to the detail and then walk on set and be prepared to just throw everything out the window if something is making more sense to me, like not just feeling like I have to like stick to the plan that I set, but if I'm just like, I'm watching this and it's beautiful and now I think maybe it should all be one take, then then being sort of true to my instincts and being like, what you're watching right now is working, that's the right way to go.
Right. Maya, do you find that you're when you're reading stuff that you're anticipating doing, and you come across, I always like to ask cinematographers, like, so I did this show once upon a time that had like a very elaborate oneer that I've been asked about a lot. That was well executed, but honestly, the thing was like blow by blow on the page, like written with incredible sort of detail. And I remember getting to it and just being like, I know how to do that, you know?
Yeah.
But it wasn't it wasn't a creative, I mean, there was creativity to it, but it was, you know, kind of, it had been so perfectly rendered in writing that that I often don't have much to say about it other than kind of what we ended up executing, you know.
Yeah,
but when you come across stuff like what, you know, things that Chelsea has written or things that just other directors have written that have like a really precise visual, like what's your immediate, because I know some people kind of go, oh, I would never do it that way, you know what I mean? Like there's a resistance to this weird thing of like the church and state of director camera, you know.
Yeah.
What's your feeling?
Yeah, I love getting scripts that have, you know, minimal dialogue and a lot more visuals written in. They're pretty rare though. I understand that, you know, a lot of people move story forward through dialogue. But I guess it depends on how the script came to me, like literally came into my Gmail or whatever, you know. It's like, because what's new for me now is like being submitted for projects, you know.
Right.
Was something that was not really in my life for like the first 10 years. Projects would come to me because of stuff I've already put out. So I could sort of assume they were after what I'd already put out there in a way. But now it's like, they could be coming at it from any which direction because I'm new to them too. So they're checking my stuff out for the first time. So I always try to gauge it, you know, in those scenarios. Depending on like the context of how the project came across my desk kind of thing.
Right.
But I think I have to like, if it's really dialogue driven is when I start to go there of like, how do we shoot this thematically, you know? And if it's not very dialogue driven, I find it's often sort of like inherently baked into the writing a bit more in a sense. Just the description of the atmosphere or the shots or the action or something like that. But then of course, you know, it's always interesting to hear where they want to go. And then definitely
I always love that thing of like, oh yeah, and then in the script this is happening, and then, oh yeah, don't worry about that, we're never doing it that way, You're like, oh, sweet. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. I love it when they like, you know, surprise you with like the approach, because you think you assume it's going to be done in a certain way that maybe you've seen a few times before or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, I do worry that I like over pitch things, but I try to be diplomatic about that. And they can always just say no. That's the beauty, I think, of it. It's like, as a director, you're just saying yes or no to things all day. I'm there to hear them out and what they want to do. And it's in that initial connection of like, do I have something to offer to them? Am I the right person for this too? You know, because you want to be a supportive person to that director. And if it's a good match, it's a good match. But I don't want to shoehorn myself into a match, you know?
Right.
I don't know. What do you think? How about you?
I don't know. I mean, I think that just, you know, like just being receptive is I mean, Chell, you probably have some thoughts on this, but it feels like the more you're able to really kind of throw out whatever the last thing was you did, you know, and there's bad experiences too that you have to kind of toss out of your mental space because they can do tremendous detriment, you know what I mean, when it just doesn't work out. And you know, or long-standing relationships don't work out for whatever reason, people change, et cetera, so forth. You know, you have to be able to constantly like revive what is the foundation of a good relationship, you know, and know the things about the person that are tricky and know the things about the person that are great, and so find out the language to use to support them in whatever way that you can. Like Chelsea used to, I mean, she would become incensed with me on occasion, you know, in my kind of barrage of just, you know, totally insane hyperbole that comes out often, you know, when we're sort of like in the thing and doing it, and I'll kind of go down the rabbit hole of either over or under explaining myself or getting, you know, whatever it is, and she'd just be like, dude, you gotta stop this now.
Just good at reining it in.
Shut the fuck up.
There was a fair amount of that. There was a fair amount of that. But you also, you know, it's like early days too. I think that you're having to use more words just by nature of like you're new to the thing.
Yeah. And yourself, like I was definitely like self-conscious. So in a way that I'm not now, of like, yeah, am I appearing like a director? Which now,
sure.
Again, just
right.
a long made piece that like, I'm not going to walk into a space and people are going to be like, and here comes the director.
Right.
A lot of times, like I was on a commercial shoot in Calgary, like an Olympics commercial, and literally I walked on set and somebody, you know, asked if I was the PA. Or like we were on a scout. So like that happens to me all the time. Yeah.
I've said that, but you're not alone in that. That has happened to all of us for sure. I mean, I literally, like, on occasion I say I am a PA, you know, because people don't, you know, there's like this sort of, and it's a huge, it's a massive industry-wide problem of, you know, how people are sort of seen and either promoted or not promoted or moved through the ranks based on a lot of factors that have absolutely nothing to do with their abilities. And it goes to everybody, you know, people of color, gender, age, you know, country of origin, you know, it's all of it is really, and we just have to shred it with every possible opportunity. We have to completely shred what is left of that in our industry, you know. And I think that you two have done a tremendous job at that, and I certainly am constantly hoping that I'm promoting those sorts of ideas as well, because, like, you know, you're walking onto a big Olympics, Samsung, that was that Samsung job, right, in Calgary, which was, you know, it's like, was a big deal, you know, to do that job. And like for somebody to be like, oh, you know, like, let me see your papers, you know what I mean? You're kind of going like, it's really, so Anyway,
It's very awkward. It's very funny when that happens. I was like on the 3rd season of the same TV show and pulling up in my car and being asked about, because I would have been late for blocking, so I needed to park in like a kind of like an asshole move. Like I was like, can I just leave this here for a second?
oh yeah.
And they're, but anyways, it's funny. It's not funny, but it happens.
I think I would have been more offended if I was younger, because that's this thing, you're learning these relationships.
Right. Sure.
But now I'm like, I give no fucks. I'm just like,
Yeah. Zero.
You the PM, I don't give a fuck. Like, but
Well,
yeah.
Maya went through that too. Like when she was so graciously giving me her time in the fall to come out and clean up a scene, that we weren't going to get. And there was some big action stuff, a night scene and stunts and motorcycles and all kinds of shit. And, and she just stepped out there and handled it. You know what I mean? And a lot of people, honestly, and a lot of people going like, well, who's this person and how's this going to go? And I go, she's a badass. She's going to knock this thing out. And it's great. It's great. Like those moments in the sequence are essential. And there's no badge that you get like, oh, I know how to crash a motorcycle. You know what I mean? Like you don't have that on your CV. Like, oh, I can flip them. It's like, I know how to do the job. I know how to listen to what a director's goals are for a scene. And I know how to orchestrate the appropriate number of people to execute that vision in the time allowed, at its most sort of like kind of basic situation.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that though, but it did take your like vote of confidence, so so they were like, okay, yeah, that's cool.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and
it does. We all have that power to do that,
And have to.
Yeah.
Have to, friends. Have to.
Have to.
So they're sort of hoping that we can take a moment to discuss the future of the CSC live streams, Maya, which I will allow you to do since I am.
For sure. I got it right here. First of all, we all want to thank Jeremy Benning and Christina Yenna for doing this for the past 15 weeks, because these have been amazing and have gotten us through quarantine, feeling connected and all that. So really, really cool. Thank you for making this happen. Next week, I believe it's the final one. People are going back to work, So it's going to be Luc Montpellier, CSC, and the production designer, Peter Costco. And they're going to talk about musicals and production design. And that's the last one for the summer. So that one's going to be awesome. I really like Luc Montpellier's work a lot. So I'm looking forward to that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And to our dear friend Chelsea, who we managed to talk into this discussion yesterday at the last minute. We thank you as always for your insight and guidance and look forward to a great many more years of collaboration with you.
Thank you, Chelsea.
I'm always down to talk about process and talk with you guys about relive my old work and to feel uncomfortable.
Feel good. Well, feel good about it because it's compelling.
Yeah, I don't know about you two, but it's like, I love looking at that older stuff because it's like when we emerge from this quarantine situation, I'm like, I want to do that again.
Well, it reminds me of, how young we were, how idealistic we were, how much fun we had, how free we were creatively and wanting to get back to that. So that's kind of a really nice thing, and how long we have been collaborators and continue to be, and how vital these relationships are.
Totally.
Very true. Well, I'm being told final words, so I guess we'll hand it back over with that in mind.
And Matt, thanks for joining us from Pacific time.
Oh, no problem. My pleasure.
And for all your wisdom too, and sharing your work.
Well, thanks. I'm glad we got to do it, guys.
Yeah.
So I'm not entirely sure how this will work. Does it just cut us off?
Maybe
or do we
I don't know.
Or should we change the subject and talk about
sports? Chelsea wants to talk about basketball.
About your kids.
Oh yeah.